Hello and welcome to today's episode of Linking In with Louise. And today I have a culinary treat for you all. My guest today is Amanda Richardson, who is a photographer, a chef, and lots of other things. And she also, I'm very jealous because she lives 5 minutes from a gorgeous beach where it's actually warm enough to go in the sea, which is would so like to be there right now. So Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Louise. So great to be here. I'm just so honored.
Well, I'm really excited about this, and God love you because you're like, what are you going to ask me about in your podcast? Because for anyone who's listening, who's thinking that they might like to come on and be a guest, I don't tell you questions in advance. We literally have a conversation and I record it. So you're kind of like, where's she going with this?
Yeah.
So anyway, Amanda, I want you to tell everybody listening about your business and what it is you do in business and who you work with, please.
Okay. Well, so I have basically coined a phrase or a title, I guess, and I call myself a culinary brand photographer. Mm-hmm. There really isn't anything like that. Or through my research, there was really nothing like that when I first started considering doing this. Mm-hmm. And I also do anniversary photography as well. So I work with businesses and I work with the personal side of things. Mm-hmm.
For someone who's listening and going, a culinary brand photographer, what is that? So what does that involve on a day-to-day basis, Amanda?
Okay. So culinary brand photography is basically, I work with chefs, mm-hmm. mainly personal private chefs. And what we do is we brand the chef mm-hmm. as well as their food. So in the beginning, I learned to take pictures of food before I learned to take pictures of people. And there's a very definitive difference in an art to doing both of those things. So I really focused my education on one thing before the other.
Okay.
And I think it's made a huge difference because it's supposed to be this way. Your niche is supposed to be focused. And so I wanted to make sure that I could serve all the needs of my client and not just one or the other.
I love that. And I think you're right that actually there's people who are food photographers and there's people who do photography of the business owners, but there's not people who do both of those things. And yet it makes so much sense.
Yes. And food is so different. I actually just did a shoot last night of some pasta, and pasta is probably one of the hardest things to shoot, in my opinion, at least.
Why?
Well, it was a bucatini, and bucatini is like a spaghetti. So you get into like
the lines to sit right.
Yes. I mean, we're talking like tweezers and moving, and this caper isn't in the right place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, the intricacies that go into, you see a cover of a food and wine magazine and like somebody was in the background moving that piece of pepper to the right location. It's amazing how detailed it gets. And,
that's why the pictures look so amazing. And then when you do it yourself, you're like, mine looks nothing like that.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that it also goes to editing. So you can take a great styled shot, but if you then don't go back and edit it, it can look brown or gray or.
Okay. Right. So everyone listening is now going, right, I'm hungry now.
Yes.
And then the difference with taking the chef. So the whole thing is fascinating to me. The personal and private chef world. I mean, you are in North Carolina in the US. And I would say that in the US, there is quite a lot of personal and private chefs, correct?
Yes, it's actually a huge industry. And because of coronavirus, it's actually grown exponentially very recently. Yeah. I have one of my clients, she was emailing me at one point during the pandemic and said she was just slow and, we wanted to hop on a call. She's like, oh, I'm free whenever. And then a week later, she's like, I am booked every single day. I have no days off.
Wow.
So because people are realizing right now with restaurants, you can't go out. So people are going to have smaller gatherings in their home, and they're going to hire someone, to come in and cook for them so that they're not slaving away in the kitchen, which makes sense.
This is really surreal to me because, well, apart from the fact I like cooking anyway, but I mean, the people who are hiring, we're completely going on a tangent here, Amanda, I'm sorry.
No,
you're
you're
invested. People who hire a personal chef or a private chef, like, to me, it's somebody who's super rich, but is that not really the case here?
It's actually not. You would be surprised. A lot of the chefs that I work with are actually specializing in dietary needs and elderly. And, if you have like your mom who's elderly and she's living alone and, she's okay alone, but you still need her to be, on a diet and you need to make sure she's eating well, then you may want to hire someone to come in and do that for you. And they also have meal plans where they'll cook in a commercial kitchen and then they just deliver the food as well. So there are different aspects to a personal chef. It's not just necessarily throwing a party. Okay, so there's all kinds of like different avenues you can go.
I really feel like my podcast is doing a service to the world of educating people on this is another job you could do for a living.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Well, I did it. And that's actually how I connect so well with all of my chefs now, is because I did it. And I always had this secret, even when I was doing wedding planning, I would always watch the photographers and listen to them. And I always had this secret, like little, I don't know, crush to be a photographer, Yeah.
And I know what you mean, because it's so skillful.
Yeah. And it's creating something, it's artistic. And I
totally get it.
Yeah. And so I ended up asking my husband, I said, for my birthday, I want a quote unquote real camera. Yeah. And I had taken pictures in the past of like food and things when like I look back at them, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible.
This is so funny. So for anyone listening, my sister's a photographer and I remember her getting her real camera and I was kind of going, like, what's wrong with your camera phone?
Yeah.
And I actually said to her, so I kind of give her big sister advice about business, and which nobody wants advice from their big sister. And I'm like, Tara, your photographs are amazing, but like the photographs you did a year ago, I probably couldn't tell the difference. And that's probably, like, she's probably going, I'm really offended by that. But actually, if you're not a photographer.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you notice amazing photographs. Mm-hmm. But we also, somebody who's like pretty good at photography, for someone who's not artistic or hasn't a photographer's eye, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But then it is a skill. And did you then get training in photography, Amanda, or did you learn it yourself? What way did that work?
Well, actually, what I did was, so I got the camera, and it wasn't a full frame camera or anything. It was just a starter professional, and just started toying around with it. And I had actually taken a photography class years and years ago. And I think some of that honestly was still there because it came pretty naturally to me.
Yes.
The first thing I did was just I YouTubed the heck out of the camera. So I wanted to learn every manual setting, how to set up, how everything worked.
Yeah.
So I learned all of that and then really started taking pictures. Now, I didn't really have very many subjects. So I could only drag my son outside so many times.
Listen, all children who've grown up with photography mothers are just going, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Every time I turned around, there she was with her camera.
He would I swear he wore a red sweatshirt one time, and I was like, I swear you're doing this just to annoy me. This is the worst color to writing all over everything. It's like, really?
To pay these children, really.
So because I couldn't pull on him too much, I was like, well, I need a subject, right?
Yeah.
So instead, I started taking pictures of food because food is what I know.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I love, because at the end of the day, whenever I would cook, and I mean, even growing up when my kids were little, like, I'm going to set the plate up right. Like, you're not going to just like, I'm just not going to throw it on the plate. And I really started to learn that I really appreciate the beauty of the art of the presentation of it. Then I wasn't enjoying the stress of being under the gun and, having to throw everything out.
Yeah.
So I was really becoming passionate about that. And so that's kind of where it was born. And I totally can appreciate and understand and sympathize and empathize with chefs because I've been there and I know what it's like. And
it's
I know
completely different, isn't it?
It's so different. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of how it all kind of came around. And I really love working with food, in that sense. Mm-hmm. But what I didn't honestly expect was I started educating myself formally with some education through Caitlin James Photography and doing the Six Figure Lab and the business side of things. And so really started to get myself a really solid, firm ground in establishing the business.
Yeah.
And what I didn't expect was really falling in love with photographing people too. I thought I wouldn't enjoy it for some reason. And so when I initially taught myself the food and all of that, and of course there's always things to learn, like I'm still learning.
Yeah. We all are.
Right. But I learned how to edit food and everything. And then I started taking pictures of people for real. And I was like, yeah, I think I need to learn how to do that right. Because editing a photo of a person is completely different. You're going to, so that's how, and I really fell in love with that aspect of it too, which is kind of how I weave my two worlds together now. So
excellent. Well, I mean, Amanda, that's some story.
You kind of had everything in there. You said that your audience likes storytelling. So
yeah, they do. Okay. So, I mean, what people also want to hear about is a little bit about social media and particularly LinkedIn. And I think photography, for social media posts, people hire photographers to get good photographs for their social media. But on LinkedIn, one of the key things is your headshot. So for somebody getting a headshot taken for LinkedIn, so this is like with your personal profile, can you offer them good tips on how to get a good headshot?
Well, it's interesting because a headshot and a portrait a lot of times get confused.
Yeah.
So a headshot, and I mean, you can crop anything, right? But a headshot is actually just from your very bottom of your shoulders up. It's not a portrait is waist up or even chest up can be considered portrait as opposed to headshot. So that would be what I would suggest mostly is that you crop it in a way that, because on that circle in LinkedIn, you want your head centered, and it's really hard to see a lot of the pictures. If you don't have the clarity of the picture, number one, if it's not a high resolution photo, and if it's not centered properly, you're not going to get your face. It's just going to look like a blurry whatever, So I think that would be my suggestion, is to make sure it's cropped properly and to make sure the resolution is good.
And do you, I see a lot of really terrible head photographs on LinkedIn.
I think we all do.
Is there a photographers group where you all share really bad photographs, people online?
No, the photography groups I'm a part of, I'm part of some really great ones.
They're all very positive, obviously.
Yeah, it's very positive, yeah. Although I will say I'm a part of one that has a lot of wedding photographers in it, and a friend of mine posted a picture of herself. She was a high school friend. She posted a wedding picture, and it was 20 some odd years ago, and it was, I screenshot it and posted it in the group just as a joke for a laugh for the day. And I think I got hundreds of people with a laughing face, because it was the most ridiculous, back then you did these silhouettes of yourself looking at yourself in the way.